What day is it? October 16, 2023, our school board meeting. Can I get everybody up for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Superintendent's report.
All right, good evening. First off, pleased to introduce our new student rep. We want to make sure we give Grace a welcome. Grace is the senior class president, NHS secretary, a member of Key Club. She's on the Student Athletic Advisory Council and fits in 3 sports during her season. So a little bit of everything for Grace. So welcome to Grace. We're very excited to have her here. Mr. Keelace and I met with her, and she's going to be fantastic for us. So welcome, Grace, to the board. Onboard magazine, which you all get, recent story in there had some information about a BOCES program called Elevate Student Voices. The program was run by Cap Region BOCES last year, just kind of pointing at the same program that our BOCES Questar is running this year. We signed up for it. Heath, who happens to be here, has a group of 10 students participating in it. So we're kind of excited to be able to offer that opportunity to our students. Also some very good news. We talked a lot during our retreat and with the faculty and the employees regarding student behavior. I think the overwhelming consensus among all 3 levels, all 5 buildings, is that we're seeing improved behavior overall. And that's a very positive thing for the first month of school, but also I was just at a Suburban Council Superintendent's meeting, and the feedback there was all very much the same. So the general hope or thought, as we've talked about the spiraling behavior getting worse, that maybe we've hit a plateau and that things are starting to improve, kind of not just here, but beyond our district in terms of maybe getting past some of the COVID stuff, getting past that and moving forward. So that is very good news. We're excited about that. We've done a lot of work with that, so we think that's hoping to pay off, and we hope to see that continue overall. Wanted to mention our community engagement forum. Since our last meeting, we held our first one. Had about 25 people in attendance, including parents of many younger students, which is nice to see. We do have a website now for the forums. We emailed all the information out to the community as well, and the survey results are very positive. So we're hoping our next one draws even more. We set up 4 for this year. The second one's going to be, at least tentatively, about the Warrior renaming. The third one we're looking at the budget, and the fourth one we're looking at possibly capital projects. So we have a little plan in place there. Not just because Heath is here, we have another high school item we wanted to share, and that is the Choices Matter Assembly. You're going to see it in the video, but again, we talk a lot about partnerships using our resources the best we can. This is with Stop DWI in New York. Funded through a grant. It was really focused on our 9th and 10th graders as an early intervention, and talking about good decision making. We already do with 11th and 12th graders as we approach the prom and graduation season, but trying to hit our younger high school students and helping them to make some good decisions. Free meals is a big one. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture recently passed what's called the CEP, or the Community Eligibility Provision. As a result of this change at the federal level, the percentage of free and reduced lunch that qualify for this dropped significantly. So we submitted an application. We were hoping we would get free meals for our schools, and we got the response back in record time. Shockingly quick response from the government. And please inform me that all the students in the district will be receiving free breakfast and free lunch. It's effective November 1st. And I think also a little bit surprisingly, it actually runs through June of 2027. It's a multiple year program. So we'll be rolling that information out. We literally found out about 6 o'clock on Friday. So we're working through the communication part of that, the information, but we thought we would share with you that news tonight. Again, very positive news, and something that we did qualify for at the previous threshold. And then just a quick update to kind of keep it in there because we know it's a big topic for us, and that's the foundation aid piece. This was from NISCUS, the New York State Council of School Superintendents, just talking about this educational conference board, and meetings are holding, and they issued a paper, and not a lot going on. That second paragraph, the last sentence, funding was included in the Assembly and Senate One House budget, but was not in the budget, which became law. So there's this paper out there identifying some things that we're just trying to kind of make sure we're keeping that at least in the back of our minds as we head into budget season. Nothing we can really control or do, but we know that the results of this are going to have a significant impact on our district. A lot of talk about a deficit at the state level in the billions. Was it 9 billion, I believe was the last number I heard. And projections for this coming year and the year after being not so good. I came from a meeting, was talking to Carrie about, they're talking about hold harmless not being 3% this year, but possibly 2%. So that would be a significant impact to us as well. So again, don't want to go all sad, dire, bad news, especially after free reduced lunch and choices assemblies and community engagement and good behavior and all that stuff. But the reality is it's still very much on the forefront. That is the report portion. We'll go to our video. So special thanks again to Brian Radowitz for putting it together. I will admit, you start to see these videos and you start to get a little complacent, take things for granted. And then even that video right there kind of blew me away when I previewed it. The amount of stuff that's happened, again, it's only been 1 month. So if you think about the diversity of things that are there, the age levels, the programs, it's been a pretty busy and a pretty, I think, impressive month. So thanks to our faculty and staff for making all that happen. Typically, this would conclude the superintendent's report, but it's Board of Education Appreciation Week. So you got a little gift coming. Both Grace, don't expect us to get every time. So we do want to thank the board for their work here. We know it's as dedicated leadership in public education, continuing service to the children of the community. So thank you very much. We joke at leadership, you get a certificate, but you get to frame it yourself because we are trying to keep our costs down. So Samantha, congratulations.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, thank you. Jesse, congratulations.
Thank you.
Adam, congratulations, thank you. Jeff, congratulations, thank you. Michelle, congratulations and thank you. And Grace, every meeting you're gonna get something. Congratulations and welcome. That concludes the report.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. And nice job, guys. All right. We're just gonna go right into presentations. I can't wait.
Nice.
APH goes first.
So just to kind of set that up for us again, remember, we started doing this a few years ago now, the goals, the objectives, the action steps. Matt sets it up the meeting, first meeting, talking about the teaching and learning side of things, and then we turn it over to the buildings. They go from the high school, middle school, and elementary school, and the work that they're doing with our goals and objectives and action steps, and having the high school hit lead off on this one. So, Heath, thank you for coming.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you guys for having me. Good evening. As most of you know, I'm Heath Keelers. I'm the principal at Averill Park High School. I think I got a chance to meet most of us, so I think we're good on that metric. But I am here tonight. It's the opening of the 2023-24 school year, and once a year, I get an opportunity to come and to kind of give you an overview of how things went in the previous school year and what things we're focusing on in the new school year to take things to the next level. So that's what I'm here to do tonight. So first and foremost, you should know that all of the work that we're doing is very tightly aligned with the 3 goals that you set as the Board of Education. And from my end, I want to say that we have greatly appreciated that these goals have remained static from year to year. Because as you see in the work and in the data that we're going to share tonight, this has really allowed us to, instead of changing course every single year, to really dig in a little bit more deeply into the projects that we're doing and make sure that we're continuing to get better and better and deeper with the work that we think is most important for our kids. So I do want to say thank you for the consistency that we've had in these goals because they've been incredibly helpful. So I want to start with a really quick overview of what things looked like as we wrapped up the 2022-23 school year in Averill Park High School. And all of these things are going to be metrics of student outcomes, because after all, that's the work that is most important to us and just how our students are faring by a number of different metrics. So as we ended last year, it was really good news for us to find out that we ended the year with 83% of our students having passed all of their classes at the end of the year. I will tell you that we worked very hard to get there last year. You know that you've seen the transitions that our students have gone through with social and emotional issues, with regulation, with behavior, with just the act of needing to be in school again after COVID. And then you add in learning gaps, right? So we were very pleased to end the year with 83% of our students having passed all of their classes. You can see on the flip end, we knew that we were coming into this year with 17% of our students who had failed 1 or more classes in the previous school year, right? And that of the most essential, right, we have 6% of our students, it's about 52 students who failed 3 or more classes. And those are obviously students that we want to pay really close attention to, because when you're talking about failures with 3 or more, you're talking about students who may not be on track to be able to finish high school on time. So you're going to see a lot of our interventions are really focused in on that. On the other end of the spectrum, we were also very pleased to find that in core classes alone, 62% of our kids, that's 544 students, attained mastery, which is an 85 or better in 3 or more of their classes, right? And as you can see, that was a pretty significant increase from the previous year. When you take the core and you also add in electives, so courses like art and music, you're going to see that that goes up to 81%. So 718 of our students were able to achieve mastery 85 or better in 3 or more classes across all content areas. So again, this was another increase from the previous year that we were proud of. From the metric of attendance, and this was a big one, right? As we ended last year, you'll note that we had anywhere between 2 and 6% of our students in any 10-week period of school who were absent 5 or more days throughout the course of last year. So every 10 weeks, we would look at what's the percentage. It ranged from 2 to 6%. You had your highest percentages occurring in the winter months when people had colds and things like that. But what was really most impactful to us was the fact that the previous year, the range was all in the double digits. So it was all from 11 to the high teens % per 10-week marking period. So last year, we saw a major increase in students who attended school more regularly. And in addition, you can see at the bottom that we saw a major increase additionally in students who arrived to school on time as compared to the previous year. So last year, again, we were looking at single digits of students who arrived to school unexcused tardy 5 or more times during a given marking period. The previous year, all double-digit percentages. So we saw some really big improvements in that area. With regards to engagement, right, we were extremely happy to see that we ended the year with 69% of our students participating in 1 or more extracurricular activity or athletic program. And that was an increase, and it was one of the areas where we actually met our goal that we had set as a target for last year. And this year we're off to a pretty good start. We don't have all of our data just yet, but we did start with 520 students enrolled in our fall athletic program, and that is up by 52 students over last year. So I'll be showing you some stuff about the work we're doing this year, but last year, a lot more students were more engaged than they had been in previous years. We were also super proud of our AP exams. I think we did a lot of social media and sharing this out. It became very clear that the work of our teachers and our students in the classroom really paid off last year, where we had here 6 different AP exam areas where our students achieved significantly higher than the state average, keeping in mind that you do need to receive a score of 3 or better for that AP credit to be used for a college credit. So again, you can see that our students were doing really well by this metric as well. Our Regents exams were another area where we did quite well. One of the things that I want for folks to know is you can see here the percentage of students who passed each of our Regents exams in June of 2023. And you'll note that there's 2 different metrics here. There's passed with appeals and there's passed without appeals. And what you should keep in mind is that until this past August, because of COVID, students were able to receive a grade of 50 or better and still receive graduation credit for the Regents exam. So those are passing with appeals. Then next to it, this is going to be our challenge as we move into the next couple of years. You'll see what our passing rates would have looked like without the appeals. So one of the things that we're really going to be focusing in on is making the transition from having that COVID relief on Regents exams to moving into a time where we will not have that moving forward. Now this one we talked a little bit about over the summer. At the end of last year, we responded to 1,332 discipline referrals over the course of the school year. And what we did was I broke those out so that you could see that 839 of those fell into 5 different categories. And when you really break this down, it's either attendance or being where you're supposed to be, right? Or it's being able to regulate yourself in different kinds of environments, right? So we really saw an uptick last year in student behavior, both at Averill Park High School and really throughout all the high schools in the region and the nation, as Dr. Franchini had shared. Definitely was something we worked on a lot last year. Then we went into summer, And we had 68 students who attended summer school, and you can see that 67 of them were able to gain credits that they needed in order to graduate as a result of that program, and 27 were able to get 2 or more credits. And you'll also note that because of that summer program, we had 26 more students who were able to pass a Regents exam that they needed to stay on track to graduate on time. So we had a very successful summer program. So that was the platform upon which this summer our building learning team got together and said, well, what are we going to do now as we head into the year in order to take things to the next level, in order to keep growing forward, and most importantly, to get better outcomes for more students more of the time through all of these metrics. So we have 3 objectives this year, right? Our first objective is to continue to increase our number of students who are passing all of their classes. Our target for this year is to go from 83 to 85% of our students. And we've put together 4 very specific action steps that we hope to implement this year. The first is that each of our department teams is going to be implementing 4 common formative assessment cycles throughout the course of the year. Now, if you recall back to last year, we talked a little bit about this. This means that every teacher who teaches the same course is going to work together to provide an assessment around essential standards or things that are critical within that course for students to be successful. They're going to administer the assessment. They're going to identify students who are specifically having issues with that standard, and they're going to work as a team to remediate those students so that we can fix the issues in learning before we get too far into the school year. So we're going to be implementing that cycle in all of our courses throughout the entire high school 4 times this year with teams and teachers. Last year we did it twice. This year we're moving that up to 4. In addition to that, our academic teams have committed that every 5 weeks, they will be sitting down with all of their student outcome data. So our progress report data and our report card data. And what folks will be doing with that within their teams is they'll be identifying students that are struggling, and they'll be setting a team do now, which is a very specific activity that the team is committing to implement with each of the students who is struggling. So again, our idea here is that we want to make sure that we're looking at how kids are doing, we're identifying the students who need our assistance, and that we're implementing an action plan to make sure that we're doing something to help those students out before we get to the end of the marking period or the next 5 weeks or the end of the school year. In addition to that, we implemented this year supported advisories, right? And so we knew coming into the 2023-24 school year, we knew exactly which students in each cohort had failed 3 or more classes, 2 or more classes, or 1 or more classes from the previous year. And so what we did was we set those students up with a supported advisory. So they are now in an advisory where they have a specific teacher who has volunteered to be their point person, to check in with them, to provide support, to see how they're doing each day, to kind of give them some of that one-on-one connection that they might not have in the general building. And then the final thing we're doing for this particular objective is our structured study halls. And so at the high school, we have study halls, right? And in a study hall, you're able to do a lot of things. You might manage your time through, doing your homework. You might listen to an iPad. You might, that outdated me, but you not have iPads anymore. You might listen to music. You might be on your phone. There's a lot of things that you can certainly be doing. With the structured study hall sort of model, what we're doing is every 5 weeks, we're identifying students who are failing or at risk of failing 2 or more classes, and we're having them go into a supported and a structured study hall section, where the teacher will work with them directly to make sure that we're really looking at what work do they need to do, how can they get back on track. And it's a 2-way street. So you might go in, as soon as you're passing your classes, you can go back to a normal study hall. So it's a very fluid in and out sort of system that makes sure that if a student is having some difficulty in a particular academic area, that we're using the time that we have with those students while we're in the building to provide them with support. And then of course the reward of going back to the normal study hall where you can hang out with your friends once you're on track. Our second objective is around student engagement. And this is the part where we're talking about students participating in more extracurricular activities and athletics, right? So we did a number of different things here. The first is we increased advisory to 30 minutes. As you know, advisory had been a 20-minute, 24-minute sort of event during the day. We took the time when we did our announcements at the beginning of the day and we moved it into advisory, so we now have a full 30 minutes. This is allowing students more access to clubs and activities during the school day when we aren't hitting barriers with transportation or after-school activities or conflicts with other things that students might be doing. So we're hoping that this will give students more access to these kinds of activities. Just last week, we did our first grade level advisory club fair in the library. So all of our clubs and extracurricular activities were on display, and every grade level had a very specific day that they were able to go in. The sign-up sheets look fantastic. At this point, we can see that most of our clubs and activities have recruited a lot more students. We also implemented a post-fair survey to figure out from students exactly what it is that we have that's working and what are some areas where we might have gaps, or what are some things that we don't actually provide right now that students might be interested in. The other thing we are looking to assess through that survey is what students are doing outside of school that might not be connected to us. Like which of our students are engaged with 4-H or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. We're trying to get a sense of what engagement looks like beyond just what we can control in the school. We also did a very excellent activity at our faculty meeting last week, where we took those 17% of students who we know had failed one or more classes last year, and we did a workshop in our faculty meeting where we looked to ensure that every one of those students has an actual adult who connects with them in the building. So we did a whole workshop roundtable activity. In the end, out of about 150 students, we found that there were about 21 who didn't have a person who's still connected with them. But this activity not only helped us to identify which students are at risk and who they can connect with, but more importantly, we now know which students don't have a connection, and we're starting to build those connections for those students so that we can make a bit of a difference. And our third objective is digital fluency. And what we're starting this year is very exciting, right? So this year, our entire action step is around assembling a team of teachers and students and administrators who are going to develop a vision for what digital portfolios at Averill Park High School will look like in the next 3 to 5 years. Our ultimate goal is that we would like for the Averill Park High School graduate to leave not just with a transcript with numbers, but also with a portfolio that contains a picture of them, of who they are as a whole person, right? Their best work, their best projects, their extracurriculars. And it's basically, I think we tried to, it's basically a branding idea, right? It's basically the student's brand, who they are beyond what you can see on a transcript, right? And so we do have a group now of 12 individuals who are meeting monthly. And our goal is by the end of the year to be able to roll out our vision for the next 3 to 5 years for the development of these digital portfolios for all of our students. And one of the components there is also the idea of the capstone project. And that would be that at the end of a student's senior year, right, they would be able to go into their portfolio, take the topic or the idea that they're most passionate about, and create a research presentation and a project around that idea. So we have a lot of really great work going on there. So those were the official sorts of action steps and objectives that are aligned with the goals. We also this year launched We Make AP a Great Place to Be. Now this was in response, right, to some of the behavioral and the community and the cultural things that we're looking to hope to improve within our student body, right? And so we started this year with be respectful, be safe, and be responsible, right, as school-wide norms. And what we're doing is we're meeting with each one of our grade levels on a monthly basis to really bring them programming around wellness, self-regulation. We're sharing our student outcome data with students. So we'll be bringing the 9th grade in and saying at the end of the first quarter, this is what things are looking like right now. We've had this many referrals. These are the behaviors that we're seeing. This is the attendance trends. And we're going to set goals and targets with students. And we're going to be working on finding ways to start the process of really rewarding the grade levels and the groups of students who are really meeting with the expectations that we've got. And as students begin to be rewarded, we have these really cool I Make AP a Great Place to Be t-shirts, right? And so we'll be giving these out as we move through the year and as we go through these class assemblies. And actually, just so that you guys know, I have one of these for everybody on the board here tonight as well. So there's a bunch here. So you guys make AP a great place to be as well. So this is one of our strategies for celebrating community and making sure that we're really reinforcing the positive things that our students do in the school. each and every day. The other piece, as you can see, is, and this is one of the final slides we've got here, there's just, like Dr. Franchini said when you looked at his presentation, in 13 years of having worked in some form of school leadership in a high school, this year has been without question one of the most ambitious in terms of the number of things we are doing to bring ourselves to the next level. So in addition to all the work that I just shared, these are all things that are happening right now at the high school. And the things that are not bolded are things that are happening at the state ed level, right, above us. And the things that are bolded are actually things that are happening right in our building. And so you can see that there's a lot happening there. We do have a number of teachers who are doing a student-centered furniture pilot. You saw some pictures of Ms. Oldendorf's class. They've really rearranged their classrooms to look at ways of reconfiguring space to make classroom and instruction more collaborative, right? We talked a little bit about the digital portfolio and the capstone work. We talked about the supported advisories. We talked about our PLC work. Just so that you guys know, we started this year a brand new science research in the high school program, in addition to the rock and roll class that's being done by Mrs. Monroe. I don't think you could have missed that because that was just all over social media and in the newspaper. A really great addition to our program. We talked about the We Make AP a Great Place to Be project. Next to that is the wellness work. This year we have a group of students. I think at this point, I think Grace is one of those students. And I think we have probably 20, 25 folks who are working together on every couple of week basis to put together 4 programs over the course of the year to address student wellness, as well as building a wellness day in the spring. So this year we're going to really be addressing that using the leadership of our students as well as faculty and staff. We talked about the supported study halls. Dr. Franchini talked about elevating student voices. We have 10 students who are going to go to Questar to work on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. They'll be working at Questar 3 different times over the course of the year with 9 different school districts. And they'll be doing a region-wide summit at the end of the year. And they'll be bringing projects back to implement right at Averill Park High School to help to improve our school culture and environment as well. You know that we've got some new tire equipment and a CNC machine. That part there came to us with the support of APEF this year. This is the year we're going to be working on the Warrior Renaming Project. Our first meeting is actually next week. We have a group of, I think, almost 35 students between Mr. Bubniak and I who are going to take the lead in helping to work with the community towards who will be after the Warriors. What is that going to look like? And then we have the extension of advisory time. So as you can see, there's a lot happening at the high school. So not just our core work with student outcomes, but also just in terms of the initiatives and the really exciting things that are happening across the board. So I want to say thank you very much for all your support. I do have t-shirts for folks who are in fact really instrumental in terms of making AP a great place to be. And I wanted to see if you had any questions.
So I'm so glad that you're really focusing on those I'm so glad that you're really focusing on those students that need to be focused on, and you're really making the time and the space to make sure they're successful. So I really appreciate that. And I wanted to ask if you have a lot of initiatives going on this year that are new. And so it'd be nice to sort of get a midway. I know you it's trying it new, you might need to pivot a little bit, but it'd be nice to sort of get a mid-year, these strategies are being successful, we need to tweak this one or whatever, just because you have so many great ideas to engage those students. It's nice for us to sort of have like a check-in on how are we doing with all these great things that you're trying to make sure the students are engaged and successful.
We can certainly work in that direction. I can tell you internally within how we work at the high school, our building learning team we meet every month, right, in the second Tuesday of every month. And our entire agenda is to take out those objectives and to sit down and item by item by item, compare the objectives to the data as to where it is that we're at. So we do this, every month. We do it every 5 weeks. We do it at the 10-week mark for the marking periods. So we're following it pretty closely. I will say this with regards to student behavior, and just to give a piece of data that kind of backs up what Dr. Franchini had said. In September of 2022, we processed 76 disciplinary referrals just in the month of September. When we wrapped up September of 2023, we processed 21. So, we felt like we were doing good. We felt like things were going well. But when we started to actually run the data and look at the reports and see what kinds of things were happening, that helped to kind of reinforce that it wasn't just a feeling, and things are actually a lot better than they were a year ago.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you for all you and your whole team for all the efforts they're putting forward to make sure all our students are successful.
So thank you.
Yeah, probably. So I want to piggyback on that to say, I'm sort of an engineer by my wiring, so I love data and I love numbers. And I think information without numbers, as Laura Kelvin said, is of a meager and unsatisfactory kind. So thank you for providing numbers. I had a question about your digital fluency goal, which I like. And you stated the goal was to get people introduced to a digital portfolio. And you had a goal, I think, of 95% of students. I'm wondering, how do you measure the attainment of that? How do you judge whether somebody was introduced or not?
Right. So our action step, right, is that by the end of this year, we are going to run 2 sessions. We're going to have this team that's creating the 3 to 5 year vision present a session at our faculty meeting. So that will hit our internal group of professionals that are related to this. And then we're also going to do that for students in advisory. So our goal is, part 1 is to develop and implement the actual vision, come up with what that's going to look like over the next 3 to 5 years. And I honestly can't answer that part yet because the team has a lot out there, and they're kind of all over the place. But our goal before the end of the year is to get into a faculty meeting and present the vision for the next 3 to 5 years for what this will look like and how it's going to happen, right? And for us to do that in a faculty meeting, but also to do it with students. So the measurable piece is that we get in the room, we give these presentations, and these presentations contain the content of what the next 3 to 5 years will look like and where we want to be.
Cool, thank you.
Absolutely. It's not super data driven just yet, but at the end of the year it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More of a comment, but really I just wanted to say that I thought this presentation really embodies the mission of the school, which is every student, every day. Not just at a higher level, but you really had the detail, and bravo on a lot of those scores. The AP tests are impressive. COVID aside, they're impressive, but I don't want to say I was a victim of AP Bio, but I did have to suffer through that. And the fact that all of those kids scored 100%, 100% of them scored a 3 or higher is, attributable to you and your staff. I also liked the detail, how you listed the regions and then the regions without the COVID. I don't want to call it a crutch, but I can't remember the term you used. But the appeal, thank you, appeal. I think it's important because like Adam, I like data too, and not just conclusions. And you gave it and you identified where you are, and then you talked about the steps you're going to take, because identifying the problem without talking about a goal and the solutions and the steps to get there is still just a problem. So I thought that was a great presentation, and I'm excited for you and for the school, and thank you for everything. And I'm very excited for my t-shirt.
I'm glad. No, thank you very much. It's been good. Like I said, there isn't any question. This has definitely been one of the most ambitious. Like, there were points in the summer where I kind of pulled back and said maybe we're doing too much, right? But everything here is just so important, and we have all the right people in our building that want to do the work, and so we're certainly not going to say no to good work. And we have folks who really wanted to engage in this stuff, so we need to make it happen. So it's important.
I just had a couple of things if you guys are good. I just want to try out one thing that you said. So when you first opened it, you used the word static, but then you used the word consistent. It's just for the goals, and I like the second word better. Well, and I think it's more reflective of what you guys do, because it's not obviously nothing is static in there. That's I get where you're going, but I think consistent is the right word, of having these consistent goals, but nothing within those goals is static except the commitment and then the accountability that I feel like you guys are setting up for yourself within, whatever pilot, whatever you're working on, that it does seem to come with accountability, which is, what we're trying to do here. And I'm also like, I'm very curious to see how the, what they come up with over at Questar, the kids working on DI, coming out to other schools and bringing that back here. And hopefully we'll hear about that or get to experience that at the back end of that. I have a quick question. In that whole like word mosaic, there was it reaffirmation that it was a state level thing that was the CTE. Was it a recertification?
Yes.
So was that like, is that something they do every year where they're like, yes, we're still committed to CTE? Like, is there a year that's like, man, that's not that important? Like,
No,
'cause to me, it seems kind of important. Like,
absolutely. No,
it's
it's a good
like,
question.
what does that mean to have that?
So our automotive and our construction technology programs are state certified CTE programs. So they're programs that typically students would need to go to a BOCES or a Questar to receive, but we offer them here in-house with our own staff, right? In order to stay certified, every 5 years, we have to go through the certification process where we work with the state to check that the curriculum is still up to par and to kind of make sure that we're still aligned with the state standards for the area.
So it's not a statewide recertification, it's a certification of us by them so that we don't have to send our kids elsewhere to get CTE.
Yes, and I put it there because it is huge. It's a lot of work. And so the team that's doing that, which is led by Mrs. Mean, one of our assistant principals, like that's a full-time job right there. So it's a big initiative.
Well, yeah, and it's like, again, it's another, it seems like another example that, there's teaching, there's like, here's, 10 times 25, but then there's all the other things that teachers seem to be doing, and you seem to have them wholeheartedly behind all these myriad things. Kudos to them, and kudos to you for having everybody wear all these different hats.
Thank you.
Success.
I'm gonna ask you to go back to that slide too, because there's a couple acronyms on there, NGSS, I don't know what that means, and the BOR.
So
Board of Regents, okay, yep, and the APPS,
Okay, so
sorry.
that's okay. The NGSS are the New Generation Science Standards.
Okay,
So right now, our science teachers are going through the process, and it's actually K-12, right? So it's all of our teachers across the district are working through the process of really updating their curriculum standards. And for them, it's a really big shift from moving from teaching in units to teaching by phenomena. So instead of introducing a topic or an idea, you're introducing a problem, and that problem needs to be solved using content from various areas, right? So it's a kind of a different approach. It's like real world problem solving sort of approach to science. Yeah. Again, a huge initiative and taking a lot of effort and energy, so definitely worth some room, right, in the presentation.
and the APPS suite, right in the middle.
Oh, okay, so that actually, I probably should have bolded that. That's the apps suite. That's our student help desk up in the mezzanine here at Averill Park High School. So this year, Mrs. Park, our library media specialist, and Mrs. Sector, who run the app suite, completely changed the curriculum and updated it. And so at this point, they're initiating an entirely new curriculum with the app suite. So students are not only going to be providing tech support, but they're going to be engaging in content. And one of the big things that we're hopeful for is that it's going to actually, we think, become one of the areas where we can really get these digital portfolios up and moving within a classroom in a space that already exists.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Question on the digital portfolio.
Do your, just so it can get captured.
Okay, question on the digital portfolio, and I might have missed this. Is it a platform-based, like do you have a platform that you're utilizing for that, or is that?
Not yet. We will need, it will need to be a platform-based sort of thing. That's one of the discussion items that the team is looking at now. We have a team at the high school that's going to work on digital portfolios, but in truth, there's a K-12 teaching and learning cabinet that's been working with Mr. Hayden for the past 2 years. So we are going to be probably looking at platforms, but we're also going to have to be looking at that alignment between, where we start in elementary and how does it feed to middle,
Right.
and then high school. So eventually there will be a platform. I don't know which one it will be yet.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Absolutely.
You good? I'm good. I feel like I want to go like sit in on some of these like classes, and the NGSS sounds like totally right on. All right, if we are all good, then we can just thank you, Heath, and
Thank you.
thank everybody over at the high school, well, here at the high school, for all the hard work they do.
Absolutely.
No lie.
And at the end of your meeting, there's these are up here, they're in sets of 9 of each size, and I didn't even want to guess on sizes. So come up, take what you need,
Thank you.
and, whatever's left over, we'll grab tomorrow. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, I think we're, Jim or Carrie, wherever that's at a fire.
So, yeah, thank you, Keith, for that, and feel free to take off since you'll be back here in about 10 hours.
Yeah.
And we'll turn it over now to Carrie. As promised, we're moving along the path of the firefighter and ambulance workers exemption. So we want to provide some information for the board tonight, and the hopes that we'll have some guidance from you as where we head from here in terms of next steps. So, thank you, Carrie.
So tonight, really, what I'm going to do is just give a brief overview of the legislation and then talk about the fiscal impact to the district if, in terms of adopting the exemption. So this legislation was adopted last December, and really what it does is provides a 10% property tax exemption of assessed value for volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers. And what you can do with this tax exemption, it's available to all taxing jurisdictions, so it can be layered. You can get it for the county, the town, the schools, so we can qualify for each of the taxing jurisdictions, which makes it a bigger benefit to some of the firefighters and the current income tax that they can qualify for. And really it was signed into law as a recruitment attention tool for first responders, the first responder community. Now, there are some eligibility requirements that go along with this. So the property must be the primary residence of and owned by the volunteer firefighter or ambulance worker. And it has to be located within the jurisdiction served by the fire department or ambulance entity. So if we have a firefighter who's serving within the jurisdictions within our school district, but they don't live within our school district, they won't qualify for our tax exemption. So, and the volunteers must have at least 2 years of service to qualify, and it can be established between 2 and 5 years, but 2 years is the minimum. And then the fire district or ambulance company must certify that the eligible volunteer service requirements have been met. In addition to the 10% exemption, these are some additional benefits that come along with it. So property tax exemption can be permanent for volunteers who have 20 years of service, so long as their residence remains a primary residence. So if they decide after they stop serving, they want to be a snowbird and only here 2 months a year, it's no longer going to qualify for as a primary residence. There's also 2 other things that can be adopted by the resolution. One is a tax exemption to extend a lifetime of work to a surviving spouse. They have to remain unmarried, and their deceased spouse has to have served for at least 20 years. So that's one thing we can add on to the exemption. And the other is a line of duty death, in which the spouse of the person who died in the line of duty can get that going on as long as they served for 5 years. So those are 2 lifetime types exemptions. And again, that spouse can also not remarry. So those are 2 things that we can add on in terms of what we grant if we move forward with it. So I'm going to talk through a fiscal impact example, and I want to be clear from the start though, passing this is not going to affect the amount of taxes that we are able to raise as a school district. It only impacts taxpayers across the district as well as the volunteers who get the exemption. So as I walk through this, I'm going to do it from both of those lenses, those in the community who do not get the exemption and those that do. So in 2023, our total assessed value is about $1.1 billion across the district. And we have properties in 9 towns, and within there's 10 first responder agencies that have people right now that are on the list that could qualify. And I'm using the 23-24 true value tax rate, which is $15.68. And that's just a way to look at it from a district perspective instead of doing it town by town, just to show you the effect of what the legislation could have. A couple of assumptions that I have here. We have approximately 142 eligible volunteers. These are figures that were given to us by local firehouses as well as a town assessor. So this is, even though they're eligible, they may not qualify. So this is, I'd almost think of it as like a upper level kind of maximum. And then since I don't know who the volunteers are and who may qualify and how much their house is assessed at, I picked a standard $250,000 just to show a potential impact of this. So if we look at the impact to the overall assessed value, which is how much your taxes will be spread out against, at 142 eligible volunteers, if you take the $250,000, it's about a total of $35 million in assessed value. But of that 35 million, only 10% of that would be part of the exemption, which brings it to about $3.5 million. And if you look at the total of our assessed value, it's less than 0.5% of total assessed value that would be taken off the rolls to be spread amongst the rest of the taxpayers. So for non-volunteer community, what this might look like, again, I use the $250,000 for them as well. So the change in the true tax rate by taking that money off of the rolls is about 3 cents per $1,000 worth of assessed value. So the increase to the tax bill in a $250,000 house is about $7.50. On the flip side of that, when you look at the savings for the volunteer firefighters, we take and ambulance workers, we take the $250,000 times the 10%, which gives the exempt value of $25,000. We take that times the 15.71, which is the true value tax rate plus that additional 3 cents. So ran it through, put it through the increase, it's about a savings about $393. So that would be the savings off the tax bills for the volunteer community. Any questions on that? Because that's a lot right there. No? Okay. So really, if this is something we want to move forward with, the next steps would be to hold a public hearing at a future board meeting and adopt a resolution opting into the property tax exemption. The tax exemption percentage, again, up to 10%, and the years of service, volunteer service requirement to be eligible for the exemption. And we could choose between 2 and 5 years for that. And then there's also the choice of whether extending that exemption for the surviving spouse for the volunteer, the 20 plus years of service, and also the exemption for the line of duty surviving spouse, who again means not married and has at least 5 years of experience, 5 years of service. And then I'll turn it over for questions and discussion.
Your model was exceptional, thank you.
Thank you.
One question I have is for the people that, the first responders who achieve more than 20 years of service and therefore are entitled to the permanent, did your analysis include any of that? Are they like grandfathered in to this, or is it, well, starting now, 20 years from now, you might reach permanency if we pass this?
No, so the only thing I did in my analysis is take the 142. I don't know which of those members, how long each of them have been serving. So the local firehouses gave us districts, they gave us data, but it wasn't broken down by anything.
Okay.
In terms of years of service.
I was just saying, I think you're asking whether or not, it's kind of two separate questions, whether or not it would only be moving forward or it could retroactively apply. So firefighters who, assume this gets passed, who currently have 20 years, whether or not they would get it.
Or actually somebody who served for 25 years and stopped being a firefighter last year, are they eligible?
I don't think that second scenario would apply. I can double check with the attorneys. I think the first scenario would apply. Like if they're currently serving in their 19th or 20th year, I think that then it would apply to them. But I don't think if they stopped serving years ago, that it would be retroactively granted.
Okay.
That would be my assumption, but I can double check on that.
Yeah, I thought that came up where it's like, you can't go back, because then you could go backwards. Or you could go back 5 years, you could go back 10 years, you could go to any person who's ever served for 20 years. I feel like you did cover that like 2 or 3 of these ago. I think so. But again, if somebody is in like year 10, then in 10 years, they would attain permanency.
That's my understanding, right?
And what about like a gap? Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
A gap in service. So say somebody served 25 years, retired last year, and then they said, oh, now you got this passed, so I'm gonna serve 1 more year. I mean, how does that work? Just a question, do we know? Do we have?
I have to inquire about that. I don't know how that would work if
Yeah,
somebody just gonna come back for 1 more year just to get the.
Or if they served, 20 years and they've been retired for 10 years or whatever.
I think it wouldn't depend on the language of what's passed. I mean, it would say consecutively or collectively. I imagine it would be dictated by the language.
We probably could, when I think the attorney would draft the resolution, put in, have some kind of qualification in there in terms of consecutive service.
I guess I didn't know if the state had laid out a framework for that already, so it was sort of the.
No, I think there's a little bit of flexibility in terms of
Okay.
qualifying, what you consider your service, from what I read.
Okay, I'm just curious, I mean, just trying to think of all the potential scenarios.
I just wanted to say, I thought that, like Adam said, your breakdown made it easy to understand, and I'd like to move forward to the public hearing. I think it's a great opportunity to thank people who risk their lives for no compensation.
Just one thing about the numbers that I want to clarify, that, you know, you're shooting for like a sort of a middle ground. So you're saying a rough increase for a household with a 250,000 assessment would be about $7.5. It could be lower than that, and it could be a little bit higher than that, right?
Yeah, and likely it will change next year because your overall assessed values may increase in the district, or equalization rates by town, would change. So it's like with the increasing of the assessed value, like it's theoretically your houses will go up in value each year. The impact will actually be smaller.
The only way to even do something like this is to make some assumptions.
Right.
Yeah.
And anecdotally, I can tell you that some of the districts that passed it last year, they have said that it came in lower than what they had projected because not all of the people qualified who they didn't do the initial. And we have 142 up there, but it's likely not all of those will qualify. From one of our towns, we initially got I think it was Poston Kill, we got information for the firehouse with a higher number. We reached out to the town, and they had a little bit better, and it was a lower number. So I suspect that we will see that across the varying firehouses in town.
Well, and, sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
That 142, was that including like already the stipulations on they lived in the town that they were serving in, or are we expecting that, like that's a max kind of number?
I'm assuming that's a max, because we'll see,
Okay.
I don't know if some of those people in that number, if some rent, some might not own,
Right,
some might
right,
be
I
the
know what you're
primary
talking
owner of
about.
the residence, so it depends. Once we go through the certification process, it'll become much more clear how many people
Right, so that's
actually.
the max, like that we actually have volunteering right now. That's,
Well, right now, that number was a maximum that we think that are eligible. So,
okay,
that-
the
right.
2 years.
So
Right,
that
okay.
$7.50 impact is also a max.
I would think,
Well,
because if it comes in
Based
lower,
on-
yeah,
on
based on
your house
based on
is
data.
Yeah.
Again, it's a,
Your assessment.
Well,
And that's-
based upon the
Oh,
number of
yeah.
first responders we need to fund, which is the max.
Right.
Okay. In terms of, we don't have any publicly available data on the average tenure of a first responder, but I see there are first responders in the audience. Do you guys have any data on that by any chance?
I know from Wyanskill, because we have East Greenbush Schools, Lower Red, Averill Park. With the school district we have, and just to give you the numbers that we have for our low SAP program, which basically show you who's active. Out of that, there's roughly under 50 people. Out of the 50 people, there's a large percentage of them that go to Wyanskill schools and pay Wyanskill taxes. Averill Park is a part of that, which I would guesstimate maybe 12 would be part of Averill Park School District that own houses. Out of that, maybe 8 of them would own a house. And then you run into the situation where if it's an older gentleman that's been there a while, his assessment may not reach to be the $200 level, because you can either have $200 in write-offs, or you can go with the tax benefit. So you're gonna lose a little bit more there because you're not gonna meet the 200. So it kind of goes back and forth, but the numbers should be fairly low, I would think, even with the 9 fire departments that you have. And then as far as like the people with the 20-year mark, most of those people that we have are our daytime crews. And they're the ones that'll get here during the daytime, and hopefully we get the younger guys to be off that day or be available for some of the interior guys. But if you look to see, if you have a fire alarm here on who's pulling in, you'll see the crew. And in Wyanskill, most of our crew is probably 60 and up during daytimes. So, and then again, if you take somebody that's been here for 60 years and had their house, their assessed value isn't very high. So again, that's where that number will get thrown back and forth.
Right.
But it will help us in the long run. The $200 number, personally myself, I hope they raise that down the road, because we do have a lot of volunteers that don't own houses. And that would help them a lot to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with Jess. I think you guys provide a valuable service. And I agree that we should move it towards a hearing. I just want to say, and this is no commentary on the volunteers at all, the firefighters, the ambulance folks. It's just about the state, the way they push things onto municipalities instead of making a broad decision. You know, they want us to have local control. Which is great, except when they comes to our tax cap, we don't have local control. So that part is frustrating to me, and it has nothing to do with your volunteers. It has everything to do with the way the state puts these things forward. Because I think if they believe that the volunteers are as important as we believe that, they would find a way to fund it for us too, and not push it on to each municipality to be able to approve or not approve. So, but I am in support of this one moving forward.
Yeah, myself included, and the only thing that I think we want to know, like going into a hearing, is like what's in our control in terms of like, what are the variables that we have to set? Or is there, right,
She had
so
that
it's
slide.
the amount,
That's
it's basically the percentage amount, up to 10%, and then the timing was there anything else, I have continuity?
Sorry,
There's
those four things.
Okay. Just the years of volunteer exemption, okay.
So we would vote on this.
So
That-
should we discuss those now? Or is that what the hearing is for?
That was the next question. Like, would we determine that, like, at this meeting right here, is that what we would say, well, okay, well, let's set it at this percentage, or let's make it be, or is that something that we would,
I think you'd want to have
Yeah.
a hearing, you could decide to have a hearing, and then after the hearing, we'd have to kind of figure out what we want to look like in terms of developing the resolution with the attorney, and then that's it.
okay.
I don't think you need to decide any of those votes tonight, and you probably would want to at least hear from the community during the public hearing before you decide if that's up to you.
So the resolution.
You won't need it for
follows.
essentially 2 meetings where you're going to adopt it.
I would also like to hear from our absent board members.
Yes. And we already discussed the timing of when we would want to have the hearing, so that it's,
So do we make a motion to have a public hearing?
You don't need a motion. No, I think it's just guidance from the board that we're gonna have one, and we would set it for the next, just to make it easy, we'd make it for the next board meeting. It's how I started. You can either, we can talk through this at leadership, you can either have it at 6 o'clock and have, you need to follow immediately after, or you can start the hearing at 6:30 and then have a meeting right after. Typically, I would recommend just starting the hearing at 6:30, because that's the time we usually start, so people aren't full by the time, and then just have a meeting roll right from there.
okay, that's where we're going with that. Was there any other discussion that we wanted to have? This is a good segue.
Is it, yeah, or questions that we would maybe, like, I think we gave Carrie sort of a list as she rolled through the information, but is there,
Oh, I mean, the only thing, did we, I didn't download that, is that?
The presentation, both the presentation from Heath and the presentation from Carrie will be on board docs. We typically put them up the next day with a little PDF and put them on, just because they're always changing, that type of thing. We put them on too late, so we just wait till they're done, finalize it, and put them up the next day.
Awesome. Right. And that's good, okay.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie, and as you guys hear, and then, so this is our first public comment session. Our first one is for public comments that are regarding topics that are on this evening's agenda. Those wishing to address the board as to complete the request form and submit to the board clerk. We got 3 minutes each, and I do have one, and it is on what we just talked about. So Fred Erickson, still here?
Thank you.
Come on. And just,
Right.
I'll say that the second part is that limited to 3 minutes. We'd like to make comments to the extent that we've been discussing this, we don't usually respond, but.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. My name is Fred Erickson. I live in West Sand Lake, and we have lived there for 48 years. I retired in 2010, and retirement has a lot of benefits, Jim. Yours is coming. But one of the things is to realize just how often we have the emergency vehicles from West Sand Lake Fire Company, of course, and the ambulance just down the road going by our house at all hours of the day and night. And I have to say, I have ultimate respect for the volunteers in these companies, the men and women that, as I often say, they're the ones that are running into danger when the rest of us are running away from it. So I certainly would endorse this as a way to doubly. It's not a lot of money, but I think it serves a purpose to send a message to these folks that we do appreciate their time and their effort and putting themselves into danger. And also, I know I have communicated to the governor and to the legislature as well in written form the importance, and glad to see, I don't know where I was, but glad to see that bill was passed. But again, to entice volunteers to get involved in these companies, because that is a serious, serious problem. You probably all have seen the advertising on television to try to get folks to volunteer. As this gentleman said, it is an aging group, but we certainly want to encourage those folks to get involved. So anything that we can do, I know personally, my wife may be watching, maybe not, but I can say, I'll go out on a limb and say I would gladly pay an extra few dollars in our taxes to be able to extend this privilege and this thank you to our volunteers who deserve that and a whole lot more. But thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Fred. And it's really good to hear from folks. Like we hear ourselves talk a lot, and these guys have been really forthcoming with a lot of information. So we appreciate hearing from you guys. So I have no other sheets. Jim, you're looking at me.
Let me take the form for me.
Oh, I always forget to do that. Okay. We have no more public commentary for right now. We will go over to approve the minutes. I think we'll approve these separately since it was a different group each time. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of September 11, 2023? Jess, then Michelle, seconds. Any discussion? Good night, guys. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving September 11, 2023 minutes? That was right. That was the actual board meeting. So 1, 2, 3, 4 in favor. All of those against? Oh, Michelle, was that 4?
Yeah.
Okay, 5. All those in favor. That was okay. All those against? Any abstentions? Okay. Great. But how do I count? Grace doesn't vote, so we're good to go. Getting there, guys. I'm getting there. Okay. Get a motion to approve the minutes of September 22, 2023. Adam first, Michelle second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, we have 3 and.
So we need to table it
We need to table it because
we weren't at present at the
we don't
meeting.
have enough. Okay. Yep. I was trying to figure out who was there and it was not the right
Because
configuration.
it was an emergency.
So, do I need a motion to table that though?
No, we'll just remake the motion that was made.
Yeah, we have no, yeah.
And we'll put that on the next agenda.
But, I mean, do we call that the motion doesn't pass? Or we just,
Just vote like it never happened. You're just voting.
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna, okay. So Linda,
We got it.
we're pulling that, okay. That's the right word. Okay, can I get a motion to approve consent agenda for business, personnel, and special education? That's Jess D and Jess Z, seconds. Any discussion?
I wanted to thank a few donors at Averill Park Education Foundation for funding the guest speaker at the elementary schools, the Averill Park Booster Club for funding the charter bus for the high school wrestling team. And I think it's, I'm not sure who gave this donation of the CNC But thank you to who did it on behalf of Dave Fuller. So I'm not sure if Dave was the one who made the donation or not, but we certainly appreciate all these donations and the continued support of our communities, whether it's through the Booster Club, the Education Foundation, or individuals, because it all makes us maintain our status as a world-class school.
Thanks, Jess. And any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? That is unanimous. All against, abstained, we're good. All right, action items. Can I get a motion to approve the interscholastic hockey merger intermunicipal agreement for the 23-24 season? Adam first, Jess D second. Any discussion? The only thing I want to say is to wish them good luck in their hockey season. That's I'm married to a Canadian, so. Well, and actually, I do want to say one other thing is that, Adam, you might remember this, that the fact that we had these merged teams isn't nothing. And there are schools, districts out there who have similar issues where they don't have enough kids to populate an entire team, and had some kind of trouble, whatever it is, where the merger wasn't able to take place. They didn't want to give up their own mask or whatever it was. And so those students missed out on playing their sport, and that's unfortunate. And so the fact that we can make this happen for hockey, and then we do it for swimming as well, as just, it's just another opportunity for these kids. So it's not nothing. So all those in favor of approving the hockey merger? That's unanimous, against, and no abstentions. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the Averill Park Wrestling Team overnight stay at the 60th Annual Clyde Cole Wrestling Tournament, Friday, December 1st, 2023? Adam and Jess D. Any discussion? Jess?
I am just remembering, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there like 4 tournaments in this package that we reviewed? So it's not just this one that we're approving, or is it multiple ones that we're approving tonight?
Are we going to approve them closer to when they take place? There was a February.
I'm sorry, I missed that earlier. So, because I would like to approve them all. So that's my reason for answering the question.
Specific, you're right.
Yeah, this is just for one of, and I believe there was 4 that were being requested
Right.
in that packet.
I didn't pass. I was like scrolling. I was like, oh, it must be down there.
Yeah.
And then
No, you're correct. Thank you for grabbing that. Well, why don't you just, we can amend it, Linda?
Yep.
To approve the Averill Park Wrestling Team field trips per the attached, because the document has it.
Exactly.
So all 4 of them are attached. So we'll just approve we'll have it as approve the Averill Park Wrestling Team overnight field trips
Request.
As
request for the
per the attached, okay.
And it has all 4 in it.
If everyone's comfortable, we can call the vote there. So all those in favor of approving all 4 events? Okay, that's unanimous as well. Okay, C, I would like to do this one. Can I get a motion to approve the overnight field trip to Washington DC, Friday, April 12th, 2024, to come back on that 14th? Jess Z and Jess D seconds. Any discussion? Jess D?
I'm just really excited that this is back. It's so great for the kids to get out and see the world out there, and it sounds like a great opportunity, and they cover a lot of area in a short amount of time.
Okay, all those in favor, Washington DC, that passes unanimously. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the agreement between Averill Park Central School District and the Children's Home of Kingston for the 2023-24 school year per the attached agreements? A motion, Jess Z, Adam, second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? That passes unanimously. Can I get a motion to approve the agreement by and between Averill Park Central School District and Smith? This is a revised document for the 23-24 school year, again, per the attached agreements. Adam first, Jess Z seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Can I get a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement by and between Averill Park Central School District and Siena College Student Teaching Indoor Fieldwork Experience? Michelle and then Jess. Did I just say Michelle and Jess? And discussion. Adam.
Have we done this before with them?
Yeah, we had an agreement with them that was just sunsetting. So they sent it to us and asking us to just update it, keep it coming.
How many kids normally, sorry, college students normally come over?
It varies.
I was curious. I didn't say I didn't, I was just curious.
It's not just Siena, it's other schools.
Mm.
So I think we get, I don't know, a handful each year probably. I don't know.
Like one in each program.
Yeah.
I think it's a good opportunity.
Go Saints.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, guys. Okay, a motion to approve the agreement by and between the Averill Park School District and the Langen School Center for Disability Services, Inc. Adam first, Jess D seconds. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, now we have resolutions. And again, Jim, just maybe a question. I'm good to not read the entire resolution, or,
Yeah, you could summarize the resolutions, 11A. And
Yeah.
The difference is really between the two is that last few, the purpose.
exactly. Yeah, and so as long as I'm reading what's in front of me, it's clear.
Sure.
I promise I'll be good. Get a motion. We're going to approve to accept the contract for cooperative educational services agreement by and between the Averill Park Central School District and the Board of Cooperative Educational Services for Rensselaer, Columbia Green Counties at Questar 3. And this for the purpose of entering into a technology installment purchase agreement. So I need a motion. That's Adam, and a second is Michelle. And discussion. This was for laptops, yes? Yep, and that's over a 4-year period?
Yes,
Numerous laptops in a 4-year period. Okay,
and because they're BOCES, we get 8 of them, right? We do. Which is why we do these for the aid.
Okay, all those in favor? That is unanimous again. And then, again, approved to accept the contract for cooperative education services agreement by and between Averill Park Central School District and the Board of Cooperative Educational Services, Rensselaer, Columbia Green County, Questar 3, for the purpose of entering into a printer lease agreement. Can I get a motion? Thank you. Adam first, Jess Z second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? That's unanimous. All right, policy discussion. On the table tonight is policy 9620, child use in educational settings, the first reading.
Right, and I know we've been doing these for some time, but can we change the language to the policy items just to read, or first reading policy 9620, because it's not, we're not necessarily approving them after the first reading. So if we could just change the language to say first reading policy, blah, 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 whatever that is. And then if the board is in agreement and we waive the second reading, then we can make a motion to approve it, but it's not assumed that we're going to be approving it after the first reading. So I think it's a nuance, but I think it's also important.
Yeah, well, I think it's indicative of how the process is correct to play out. So yeah, it's the first reading, and if we're satisfied at the first reading, we will approve it.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Are we satisfied? Does anybody have any questions about this?
I'll just
Or
speak
Jess?
from being on the policy committee. This policy, as presented to us from our NISBA policy service that we had, was a little challenging to get through. There was a lot of language that was just, well, it didn't line up in certain spots, so this we usually meet for about an hour and a half and we try to get through as many policies as we can. This one took the whole hour and a half to review and make comments and make changes on. And then we had still a couple more changes that came out after Kim had made the changes. NISBA re-reviewed it because they have to have their legal eye on it, and then we looked at it again. So this one in particular was tricky, but I also think it's very important because it protects our students. So I think it's important policy to have a keen eye on because it is really protection of our students. So just that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, well, and it does, you know, it really lays out kind of what roles adults have in protecting students. And that goes for whether they're here in a classroom, on the field, in a bus, at a different school, and, or if there's, you know, it doesn't just apply necessarily to our adults as well. So it's pretty comprehensive in the end when you take care of the run-on sentences and punctuation,
Yeah,
stuff like that. Go ahead, Adam.
so on the overall grammar, you didn't get all of them.
Okay. Well, good.
So I have a couple more.
Yes, please let us know.
So on the first page, under required reporters, you have a bulleted list there. The last 2 bullets, I think, is just 1 bullet. So it's saying, any person holding any of the following positions shall be required to promptly report blah, blah, blah. And then it's like school administrator, teacher, school nurse. And then we get from the second to the bottom, it says, any staff whose duties involve direct student contact and who is paid either by a school district or contracted to provide transportation services to children. And then the next bullet says, who is an employee of a contracted service provider. So I think that's just a continuation of the prior bullet,
Well, let's look at that because we talked about that. I feel like we talked about that.
or if it's not, then it should say any staff member who is an employee of a contract, something like that.
Don't you remember looking at that?
Well, here, I mean, I actually have.
No, so it is 2 separate things because it's any staff whose duties involves this direct staff employed by the district. And the second one is for employees of contracted service providers. So we have our contracts. So for example, we just approved several for like that Langen School. So if Langen School provides several people, then all those employees under that contract need to, are responsible.
So then could we change who is an employee to any employee, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yep, and then it keeps it consistent with how
The rest are
Yeah.
teed up. Yep,
nice catch.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Got one more.
Kim, you got that okay? Okay, sorry.
There was a lot.
There was a lot in this one.
Yeah, this is written by. Was not a good job. Just like, I'm sure your draft.
The attorney in the room
atrocious.
wasn't impressed.
So what else do you have?
I'm going through my notes, if somebody else wants to go, they can.
I've already suffered with it enough.
Yeah, we.
While Adam's looking, can I just ask a quick question? Are there other, I mean, I'm imagining that we don't have any other resources to use other than NISBA. There's not like there's some other,
There are others.
There's 2 options.
oh,
Erie one, BOCES, and NISBA.
say the first thing again?
It's another BOCES has a policy service.
Erie one.
Erie one.
So we would subscribe to one or the other to keep us up to date with the, okay.
When,
I mean, this one,
when we embarked on this, NISBA was far less expensive than Erie one, I believe. I feel like it was, and, yeah.
oh, okay, this is my first.
Yeah, this was
Yeah,
not.
this was just
one.
not,
This is
this was a tough one.
This is weird. All right, so on the second page, there's, near the top, there is the definition of educational setting. And it's just one long sentence, which reads as, educational setting means the buildings and grounds of the school, the vehicles provided to the school, either directly or by contract for the transportation of students to and from school buildings, field trips, co-curricular and extracurricular activities, both on and off school grounds, all co-curricular and extracurricular activity sites, and any other location where direct contact between an employee and volunteer and a child has allegedly occurred. I believe that should read on any, other location where direct contact between an employee or a volunteer and a child.
Good catch.
All right, then the very next line is just one longer in the sentence. And,
And we cleaned this up.
it reads, employee means any person who is receiving compensation from a school district. Additionally, for the purpose of this policy, one whose duties involve direct student contact and is receiving compensation from any person or entity that contracts with a school to provide, and just goes on, and it's not a sentence. So I believe it should say, additionally, for the purposes of this policy, an employee is also one whose duties involve direct student contact.
Or also means,
Yes.
or includes, or whatever, yes.
Well, and we had discussed where we could use bullets and where we,
Yeah,
but I think that there weren't enough criteria to, it wasn't that there were a lot of criteria, it was that those criteria were conditional, and so we didn't go. But actually, I did notice, thank you, Ab, did that Title IX not get turned into a number in yours? The one that I think that the one that was, because I was comparing my
nine,
notes.
B, and Article 5,
Like
both of those.
the 9 should be, those should be numbers, not words of numbers.
Is that what we decided?
When we were leaving it, I'd have to go back to I don't have my,
Yes.
We've debated on that.
and I thought we were leaving the word, but.
Because higher up, there's, well, I guess because it's,
It's under
More
10
numbers.
and over 10. When you hit double digits, you don't need, you should be able to use a number, and under that, you should use the
okay, so we did.
word, except in this case, I thought we were just gonna ask is the like, should it be all numbers because it's specific laws or articles that they're talking about, referring to? So that's the question we had, and I guess we miss asking that question,
In the words.
like how it should be denoted in this case because it's a particular law and section of law that it's referring to.
Yeah, Kim, I'm sorry, I thought that we had landed on, I didn't even, I
I missed that one
compared, and I thought I found, but, yeah, Marion, I think that we want to go with numbers versus words of numbers, just visually, it's just a more consistent, it's just easier to read.
For whatever reason, statutes, when they get passed, half the time they use digits and half the time it's written out. But the general rule of grammar is what you said, other than when it's multiples in the sentence. Like if you say 1, 13, 15, the 1 is also going to be a digit.
Right.
It reads better and it leaves less room for error, I think, if we use the digits.
It's all digits, yeah. So, with that kind of correction, Kim, is this something that we should have a second reading in November, just to get it
We have,
cleaned up again?
we're meeting tomorrow, so we could take another look at it.
It's true.
It's up
I don't know.
Jess was like, I want to look at this one again.
Well, no, I mean, I think we have a couple grammar things which are great, because that really clears things up. Also, in that last bullet that Adam was questioning, that we just wordsmithed a little bit, to be consistent with the other required reporters, that also has Title IX written out, Part 5. I'm in favor of not approving this tonight, but having those cited clerical things fixed and then bringing it back to the whole board. I don't think our small committee needs to debate this anymore. It's just grammar things, but I'd like to see them fixed and another clean copy before we approve. That's my opinion. If I get overruled, I'm okay with that too, but.
That would be my preference too, just so we know exactly what we're approving. I know it's kind of semantics at this point, but if we can hold a second reading at the November meeting, and then we're all feeling good about it. Okay? And so given that, we are gonna,
Is there anything else?
oh, sorry.
It was long, that's what I asked.
We'll pull 12B, we will not rescind 5465 until we're satisfied with 9620. And just to clarify, that Kim, the switch over was basically a numbering, there's not much difference.
5465 was adopted in '02, so it needed and it definitely needs an update. And it's gonna go into the personnel section versus the student section.
All right. We are at our, if everybody is satisfied with policy discussion, I know it's really exciting. This is our second public discussion, public comment section for topics not on the agenda. We also require a form for that. I have none. So we will go right over to board member reports. We usually start down at the end. Grace, are you comfortable getting this started?
Pretty much everything that I was going to report, Dr. Franchini or Mr. Keeley's covered. Honestly, all that I really wanted to touch on were the projects that Mr. Keeley's is having us do. So within student government and student council, he touched on these a little bit, but he presented the projects of empowering student voices, kind of revamping Warrior Wednesdays, which in the past haven't been as successful, and then the rebranding the Warrior. So we're working with Mr. Brubniak on that, and then for the wellness project, we've met 2 times already, and students came back with environmental problems, so we're going to have field trips and things like that, and then working on getting guest speakers to come in, and having another wellness day, which has been successful in the past, and then the empowering student voices, Mr. Keeley said, is working with Questar, so.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Grace for being here tonight. So you have quite the resume, something to be very proud of. And then I thought it was very impressive seeing the numbers again. I know we had seen them before, but it's definitely something to be proud of. And you guys are working hard towards the goals, and it shows. So thank you all.
I also wanted to welcome Grace. Thank you for sitting here with us for the past hour and a half. I hope that you found it rewarding. It really is a great opportunity to see how boards work. I'm not gonna say nothing here was thrilling tonight. We actually covered a lot of exciting topics, but you know, it's great for you to be here, and I'm sure you have a lot of other things you could and should be doing as a senior. So thank you for taking the time. We'd love to hear from the students. I also wanted to thank Dr. Franchini because I really, really enjoy seeing the celebrations of success, especially after we talk about the financial status at the end. Watching the celebrations definitely brings me back up a little bit. So thank you for showing us that, because I'm sure that takes a lot of time to put together.
All Brian Radovitz, I think. He was a good investment.
Yeah.
I want to thank Carrie again for the firefighters model thing. Just your presentation, the assumptions, the calculations was just dead on. It answered all my questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go and bad news first and good news. So the bad news is you mentioned that there's talk afoot about a 2% hold harmless increase. And it might make sense to do, before that decision gets made, arm the public with enough information and foresight about how that might impact their taxes next year, or how many teachers we might have to lay off. So as fictitious as it may end up, because you're projecting really far into the future right now, it may make sense to put together a little straw person sort of budget and say, if what the state is considering now goes through, these will be our horrible 2 choices to make. Therefore, it gives us enough advance notice to mobilize people to perhaps impact the decision that the state makes. So that's my first thing, that's all bad news. The good news is that I almost shed a tear when you said that we're funding school meals for the next few years. Because Irving Maslow's hierarchy of needs shows you that hungry kids can't learn. And so the fact that we're solving that problem moves them up a notch and helps all of our other metrics. From the bottom of my heart, I'm just so grateful. That totally makes my day. So thanks for that news.
Good point, Anne. Appreciate that. And then if we do need to get together a letter writing campaign, we have time to do that
Yeah.
because contacting our representatives is very important. Without echoing everything, but I do want to say welcome, Grace. We appreciate that you're here. We're happy to have you, and we do value your input. We've had years where we haven't had a student representative, and it's always better when you're here and contributing. So thank you for being here. And that's all I have.
My second or whatever, 5th, 4th, whatever one said to have you here for sure. And you know, again, Carrie, when you were kind of bringing up those numbers, it reminded me of a presentation that Michael gave when I first came on, and my head was like spinning. It was like the first 3 months we were talking about turf, and it was very crazy. And Michael broke down the numbers in a way that I was like, okay, I can make a decision off of that. Why not? Because like none of us are experts in all of the things, certainly not the way that you guys are. But we had to make these big decisions, and it is very helpful. And you know, I look forward to the hearing on that exemption and other stuff. So I just, like, you guys being so good at your jobs is what pretty much makes us able to be here doing what we do. And you know, Jess, you thanked the community donations that came in earlier, and I just want to say there's a lot going on out in this community. It is an engaged community, and that's so important, and I'm so appreciative. And you know, there's the foundation. There's an event coming up for the foundation. I can't wait to like dress up like a grown-up and go have it. Well, it's like a thing, right? I can like put on my grown-up clothes and go talk to other adults in a nice setting. So much appreciated, appreciative of the foundation. Maybe we'll see you guys all there. That's all I got on this autumn evening. All right, Jess, you got your hand up. Is that a motion to adjourn? Jess D, second. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Go.
Thank you.
You don't have to go home.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, your
t-shirts.
t-shirt.
Do you want to?